Deadline's coming up 3 p.m. on Friday, so we're counting down the minutes. Elliotte, thanks for coming on. I've still been basking in the glow of the gold medal for Team USA, but I got to ask you about a gold medal winner who could be on the move. Vincent Trocheck of the New York Rangers. Where do you see as possible destinations for him ending up?
So, Liam, I think there's been a lot of teams that have poked around Vincent Trocheck, and he has some control over this. The one thing that Trocheck has let people know is as much as he can, he would like to stay as close to the East as possible. Now, he doesn't have complete control over it, but he has some. And he prefers the East. Like, I think the Kings have been around it. I think Utah has been around it. I think those teams know that it's not likely. So Minnesota, not that far away, Central Time Zone, I think they're still in it. But I also think teams like Carolina and Detroit have been there. You know, we've got a few days to sort them out. The Ranger ask is high. It should be high. He did nothing at the Olympics that would make you think any less of him as a player. He took a role. He was a great teammate in that role, and he was huge at the end of the game on that penalty kill. So I think it's those kinds of teams, Minnesota, Detroit, Carolina. I always assume I'm missing something. When he signed initially with the Rangers, Detroit was the runner-up. So I always think that the Red Wings could circle back on this one as well. And, of course, he's played for Carolina before.
And Elliotte, going into this deadline, we thought, Trocheck would probably be the best center available, but all of a sudden, Robert Thomas' name keeps popping up. What's the latest on that?
You know, when it first came up I don't know that I believed it. It's like sometimes you get in this business and you hear things and you're not really sure they're real. I think the Blues could be the most, and they have a game coming up this afternoon. I think they could be the most fascinating team here. They're very disappointed with their season, and they're taking calls on a lot of guys. Now they just have to make decisions. Now, Thomas has a no-trade clause, so he has say over this. But I do think the conversations around him have intensified over the last few days. I assume that some of the teams we're talking about with Trocheck are also in on Thomas. I think Utah is definitely there. And I think the Red Wings have been around there, and St. Louis and Detroit have done deals before. Again, Thomas has the say here. Don't forget, in Utah, the general manager of the Mammoth, Bill Armstrong, is the guy that drafted Thomas into St. Louis. And Utah, I think, has been very active. They were in on Panarin. They were in on Trocheck. I don't think, obviously, Panarin didn't happen. I don't think Trocheck is happening there. So now I think they're taking their shot at Thomas, and we'll see where that goes. But, a lot of people this year have kind of linked Thomas and Montreal. I'm not convinced of that, but I do think there are teams out there legitimately trying to see if they could pry him from the Blues. But you look at the Blues, it's Thomas, Kyrou, Parayko, Binnington. I think at different times they've taken calls and had talks on all these guys. Falk. And now it's the Blues' decision to see what they actually want to do. And some of these players have either full or partial control. They have to decide what they might want to do.
Elliotte, I watched the Olympics, especially Team Finland, every second of that tournament. There was one player who really put himself on the radar, and that's Rasmus Ristolainen. Do you have any thoughts on him and any interest on him?
Yes, I thought Rasmus Ristolainen had a really good tournament, Tuukka, as you said. I especially had a couple of hits on Connor McDavid. There was someone at the game who was from one of the NHL teams. He texted me. He says, the more I watch this guy hit McDavid, the more I like him. So, he absolutely is a guy that has people interested in him. I think the challenge there is that there's a bunch of defensemen out there. Tuukka right now, and things can always change over the next few days, I think it's a buyer's market. I think there's more players available than people that are really looking. So Ristolainen is kind of in that defense group of players that teams are looking at. I heard Montreal had looked into him. I had some people who said to me that didn't go very far, but the Canadiens were the one team I heard. I know in the past Toronto's had some interest, but I think Toronto right now is more seller than buyer. So I've got to figure out where else the conversations have been. but his name has definitely been out there, and he has not disappointed anybody with the way he played at the Olympics. You know, another guy too, Finn, Tuukka, who impressed at the Olympics, but there's a lot of centers out there, is Eric Holla. Holla played really well there. I think Nashville would move him. And I heard there was interest after the way he played. We got to settle out the big centers before we move some of the next level guys.
Fried, you just mentioned Montreal and Toronto. What are you hearing about the other Canadian teams? And my other question for you is, I like going big game hunting during the trade deadline, as it was part of a big deal years ago. Are you hearing anything about Brady Tkachuk or Austin Matthews? Because I know they've been taking a lot of flack there in Canada over what happened over the White House appearances.
0-0 on those two. Anson, what are you trying to do? Get me thrown out of the country? Come on, man.
Stir it up, man. That's what I do.
I just got home. I don't want to be forced out. Brady Tkachuk is 0. I mean, he's the captain of the Sanders. He's a great captain for the Sanders. He's not going anywhere. Austin Matthews, the one thing I can tell you about Matthews is, right before the Olympics, the Maple Leafs called Matthews and his representation, and they said, if we take a step back, and they knew that this was coming even before this week, which has really been ugly for them. If we take a step back, are we going to have a problem with Austin for next year? And they were told, no, there won't be an issue with Austin for next season at that time, right before the Olympics. So they're not looking to move Austin Matthews. I don't think they're looking to move Nylander either. But I do think the way this week has gone, I think they were already sellers, Anson, but I think the way this week has gone, it has the Maple Leafs even considering not just the UFAs, but some of their longer contracted players. I think if people have ideas, they want to call them, just call them and they'll listen to what you have to say. I think they've been very disappointed by the way this year has gone, and they're willing to listen maybe on some things that they wouldn't have been willing to listen on earlier in the year.
If Vincent keeps asking you questions, you're going to be doing your next hit live from our Atlanta studio.
Come on down.
Not a bad place to be.
With security.
Exactly. I've got a couple questions about goaltending for the two teams that were in the Stanley Cup final. I'm going to get to Florida in a second, but let's start with the Oilers, because the Oilers, they pull off a trade. They get Tristan Jarry, and they trade Skinner away. You look at their goaltending now, and you could even say it is noticeably worse than it was before, but they are built to win now. The clock is absolutely ticking with Connor McDavid's short-term contract. Do they have to go out and make a goaltending trade? Do you think they have the appetite to get that done?
I'll say this, Liam, at the risk of things change quick this year, I looked into that yesterday. Were the Oilers in the goalie market? And I heard from a couple places the answer was no, that they've made their bed in net and they're going to live with that. I heard yesterday from some teams that the two things the Oilers were looking at were a defenseman who can play the right side, whether it's a righty shot or a lefty who's played the right side, or a third-line center, particularly if Ryan Nugent-Hopkins is going to be on the wing. They put a couple guys on waivers today to create some room. Mangiapane has been a real challenge for them. I thought they'd be able to move him. It's been harder than they thought to move him, and that is a salary cap problem for them. They might be able to do one or the other. I'm not sure if they're going to be able to do both. I think they looked at Justin Falk. I just heard unless St. Louis is willing to retain, it's extremely difficult for them to do Falk. I think the other guy they've looked at is Oliver Ekman-Larsson from Toronto. He's a lefty, but he can play the right side. I think, though, Ekman-Larsson has control over a trade to Edmonton, so they would have to convince him to waive it. But I think defensemen like that are the kinds of players that Edmonton is looking for. I don't think they will go into the goalie market unless Tuukka wants to get back out there.
I was just going to say, is it too late, or can I still go back? Me and Hank, both of us.
I don't see why not, Tuukka. I got to tell you, I've seen you play. I think you can still do it. I have no doubt.
I'll start stretching.
You don't get free lunches there, though.
No, really?
Yeah,
I'm out. Sorry,
and Starbucks.
I do want to ask you one more about on the Florida side of that. So the two-time defending Stanley Cup champions, they're 8 points out of playoff position right now. Time is running out, and their future Hall of Fame goalie, Sergei Bobrovsky, is going to be an unrestricted free agent. Is there a chance that they would entertain moving him?
Boy, I'll be honest with you, Liam. I have had a real, I'm supposed to be this great insider who knows everything that's going on. I have had a real difficult time getting to the bottom of this one. I think there's a couple of things here. First of all, I think Florida wanted to come back after the Olympics and just see how their first few games went. Could they make a last run towards getting into the playoffs? And they beat Toronto, but they've lost a couple since. The math is really not their friend. And I also wonder about the health of some of their guys, Liam. I wonder once Florida decides that they're not going to make it, if we start seeing some guys get shut down for the season. With Bobrovsky, I've just heard that it's, famous last words. I just heard it's been a challenge to sign him. And that, they paid a whole bunch of guys last year. And even though Bobrovsky's coming off a big contract, when you're a key part of a Stanley Cup champion like he's been, you feel that you should be rewarded too. I'll be honest with you, Liam. I don't have a great feel for it. I've heard lots of rumors. I've heard talk that they might do it. But as we sit here right now, and I made a bunch of calls this morning, if Bobrovsky is willing to go somewhere and he has partial control, I know people have speculated San Jose, but I just can't confirm it at this time.
Elliotte, last one for me. I'm going to stick in Florida as Tampa Bay. They stumbled out of the gate in the first 10 games there, and all of a sudden they're at the top of the Atlantic. And as their window closes, do you see them adding anyone? You see in the past they added guys like Hagel, Paul, Coleman on these very fair deals where they're willing to give up first rounders. Could you see something like that? Maybe a Kiefer Sherwood, a Bobby McMann, and getting a very, very cheap, under $2 million 20-goal scorer?
Yes, I do think that they could look for a depth forward that fits cap-wise, 100%. Now, historically, they don't like rentals. That has been their play. They don't like guys who are rentals. Sherwood would be a rental. McMahon would be a rental. But I also believe the Lightning are an in-it-to-win-it, do-anything-to-win type of team. And I think this is the year. They really like their group. And I think if they could get a third line forward that they think could add some offense, I do see them doing something, yes.
Final one for me. We've touched on a lot of centers here. I want to ask about Nazem Kadri because it feels inevitable that he is going to be moved at some point from Calgary, either at the deadline or in the offseason. We have speculated for a while about the idea of him being reunited with the Colorado Avalanche because it felt like that was a hole that they had a lot of trouble filling when he left. Do you see that reunion happening?
I think it's going to be hard. Here's my question to you guys, okay? What do you think Makar's number is going to be?
Oof. Whatever he wants.
Yeah.
We're talking up in Kaprizov
I would
levels,
say
right?
18 million, 19 million.
Think that high?
So
I think
everything that Colorado does is about that Makar number. Everything that they do is about that number. And whenever it comes to a player with term, and whenever I've asked around about what they're up to, it's always about protecting themselves for Makar's number. And I've heard that Calgary is not crazy about the idea of retaining on Kadri. So unless Colorado's going to be able to find a way to make that work or have the number not be as high, I think it's going to be really tough. One of the centers I heard that could end up in Colorado is Scott Lawton, who I think would be a tremendous fit, and he would be more of a rental. I would love to see Kadri back in Colorado if he's not in Calgary. I think it would be fantastic. But the one thing the Avalanche has been consistent about is we're not jeopardizing our flexibility with signing Makar. And unless somebody's willing to take some money off of them or the Flames are willing to retain, it's going to be very, very hard for them to do that.
Elliotte, Colorado's in that very difficult Central Division where we're going to lose a really good team after the first round. What are you hearing about Billy Guerin? Is he finished there in Minnesota after making that big deal for Quinn Hughes?
Trocheck. I think the Rangers know exactly what Trocheck is going to cost. What Minnesota's willing to do for Trocheck. I think they know exactly, and I think they're just looking around there and saying, all right, do we take that deal or do we find another deal elsewhere that beats it? So I think most people tend to believe that Minnesota has a standing offer for him, and we'll just see what the Rangers decide to do. I think they also looked around on Charlie Coyle, but I don't think at this time that Columbus is willing to do that. I think Columbus is willing to let this play out, especially see how they do this week. But that's the kind of player that Minnesota is looking at. And I think Trocheck is the guy on their list. I think they've got something out there, and it's up to the Rangers to make this decision. Do they go with the Wild's offer, or do they go somewhere else?
Wow.
I think they've asked me to say goodbye a bunch of times, but I have like 10 more questions. Can I ask you one more? Can I ask you one more? Yeah, I know. Sorry. Nashville. They're still hanging around. Yeah. I think we all thought that they'd fall off and they'd have to sell, and we'll see if they retain salary. But they're still hanging around. Are they still looking possibly to trade O'Reilly and Steven Stamkos? And what's the market like for those guys?
Well, it would be excellent. Stamkos said this week he's not waiving. And I'm not coming on your show and calling one of the most popular teammates in the NHL a liar. So if Stamkos says he's not waiving, he's not waiving. I take him at his word. O'Reilly does not have protection, but when he signed, the Predators promised him that he would be treated as if he had protection, that nothing would happen without his approval. Now, I understand that Ryan O'Reilly told them, and they got a point last night. It was a tough one. They lost in overtime, but they got a point. Ryan O'Reilly has told the Predators, from what I understand, that he does not want to leave them while they're in the playoff race. It is not the way he is wired. However, and Nashville's told teams that O'Reilly does not want to go anywhere. But it's kind of funny how it goes, right? Like, you know, teams haven't given up. They keep on saying, well, if that didn't work, what about this? And I've had some teams tell me this week that they think Nashville will be presented with something potentially that they might at least take to O'Reilly. But if O'Reilly has the say, which they have verbally promised him, he has told them he is not leaving them in a playoff race. But that hasn't stopped people from trying. Yeah. Now, Nashville has some other pieces, Liam. Eric Holla, Nick Perbix, McCarron. McCarron's a guy that I think a lot of teams like because he's a fourth-line center that doesn't cost a lot and he plays hard. They have those kinds of pieces, but I agree with you guys. O'Reilly is the jewel. No question, but he doesn't want to go.
Yep, and Pred's only 3 points out of playoff position. Elliotte.
Couple clicks, boys. This guy's the best
It's your time to shine. You did not disappoint.
Elliott.
And listen, if you break any news about Tuukka Rask, let Tuukka know. Let us.
That's right.
He's got to start stretching
I'm not
out.
leaving.
I'm gonna tweet out, like, there's a direct flight from Atlanta to Edmonton, and Tuukka is on it.
I was just saying I played at the wrong time. People are signing $18 million now.
Time to get back in the game.
Back in the game. Let's get back.
This is the time of year where Elliot's getting about 2 or 3 hours of sleep a night and about 20 hours of screen time, if that makes any sense.
And he's making $18 million right now, too.
Yeah, sure I am. I wish. By the way, guys, the other thing that I just wanted to mention is it's been kind of a couple things I wanted to mention. You guys just did the Penguins. Malkin and the Penguins are supposed to talk again this week. They talked last week. They're supposed to talk again this week. Malkin had some frustration yesterday after their game that things weren't more secure for next year, but they're supposed to talk again next week. So I wanted to mention that too, because you guys just did the Penguins game and he's been playing great.
Well, they just reached an agreement. He got that yellow sweater walking in. That's what
that's part of the deal.
Mr. Rogers sweater, yeah. So that's signed, sealed, and delivered.
That game ended like 3 hours ago. I forgot who played in it. So I appreciate you for you reminding us. Elliotte, you're the best, man. Appreciate you coming on. Have a great week.
Take
Hopefully
care,
get a
guys.
little bit of sleep, bud.